People always said the Maxwell family looked picture perfect. Elias Maxwell, my father, in his meticulously starched shirts, my mother, Clara's diamond earrings catching the Sunday light in the corner booth, and my brother Liam, his boisterous laugh loud enough to fill the whole diner. From the outside, we were the American dream family of Tulsa, a classic, unshakable dynasty built on the best fried chicken in 3 states. They saw the polished brass of the Maxwell Grill sign, the full parking lot, the smiling, framed photos on the dining room wall. They saw stability, prosperity, and love. But every dream looks flawless until you see the fine, hairline cracks under the paint. Cracks that, in our case, went right down to the foundation. My father, Elias, built his restaurant empire, the Maxwell Grill, one greasy, successful kitchen at a time. He possessed a terrifying, almost military-grade discipline. The man didn't just run a business, he commanded it. He could take a derelict roadside spot and turn it into a high-profit institution by sheer willpower, pride, and an unnerving belief that his judgment was infallible. He was the kind of father who believed respect was earned through unflinching obedience, instilled through fear, not some soft, undefined thing like parental love. "The restaurants are our legacy, Anya," he used to declare, pointing a heavy, silver fork at me over dinner, the utensil a strange extension of his authority. "You'll learn the business, every grease trap, every ledger. It's your duty, your birthright, and your only path." I was Anya, the dutiful daughter, trained from a young age to stand slightly outside the spotlight, a constant reminder that I was meant to support the empire, not redefine it. But my soul craved a different geometry. I yearned for light, sweeping color, open space, and the structural elegance of pure design. A stark contrast to the thick, clinging smell of frying oil and the claustrophobic air of family obligation. I wanted to design, to build structures that felt alive, breathing, and enduring, not just places for transactional consumption. The day I told him I'd been accepted into a prestigious Bauhaus-influenced architecture school in Chicago, I expected fury, a volcanic eruption. What I received was far colder, far more demoralizing. He laughed. It was a dry, dismissive sound, like a piece of sand grating against granite, as if I'd just shared a poorly delivered, childish joke. "If you walk away from this family's work," he stated, cleaning his lips carefully with a napkin, "you walk away from our support, financial and otherwise." He didn't threaten, he simply stated the undeniable reality of our world. He meant it with brutal, absolute certainty. There was no negotiation, no tearful conversation with Mom, just a severed tie. I spent the next decade on a constant, frantic tightrope walk, funding my expensive, demanding tuition through a punishing schedule of 2 part-time jobs, waiting tables, and drafting architectural plans for a minor suburban firm, and the crushing weight of student loans. I learned the true value of a dollar not from a ledger, but from the aching exhaustion in my bones. Meanwhile, Liam, the golden boy, was handed a brand new Mercedes E-Class on his 16th birthday, simply for agreeing to shadow Dad at the main diner for a few hours a week. My mother, Clara, the ultimate silent partner in Elias's tyranny, never once intervened. She would pour another glass of chilled Riesling, force a tight, glassy smile that never reached her eyes, and whisper the well-rehearsed, soul-killing lie, "He's just hard on you because he sees your potential, Anya. It's a Maxwell trait." But I knew better. She saw what I saw. Liam was already crowned the undisputed heir, the chosen one, the one who would carry the legacy. I was the financial instrument, the inconvenient artistic detour who would ultimately be expected to return and prop up the structure. The years that followed were an exercise in self-creation. I was lonely, poor, and relentless. I built my boutique design firm, Anya Maxwell Designs, initially operating out of a tiny, forgotten one-bedroom apartment in Oklahoma City, the only place I could afford. My focus was stark: minimalist, sustainable architecture, design that prioritized efficiency and longevity over cheap trends. Word of my utterly transformative work spread, driven by results and client testimonials, not family connections. By 30, I had become a quiet, powerful force, redesigning luxury boutique hotels and high-end city restaurants across Oklahoma and into Texas. I was independent, successful, and financially secure. Yet, when I returned for the obligatory family dinners, the atmosphere never shifted. The spotlight remained fixed on Liam, his latest failed franchise location, his big ideas for a drive-through model that had already cost the company 6 figures in bad debt. My internationally recognized award-winning work? Cute, Dad would grunt, barely glancing up from his steak. But when are you coming back to do something real? The true test of my unspoken conditional loyalty came when Mother faced a terrifying medical diagnosis 5 years ago. I didn't hesitate. I stepped in as the ghost provider. I discreetly arranged and paid for her specialized treatments, her cross-country travel to the best clinics, and handled every single mounting medical bill, ensuring she received the best care money could buy, all without ever once asking for recognition or repayment. I considered it a private act of desperate love, an attempt to buy my mother's freedom, if not my own. The financial bleed was constant. When Liam's highly publicized and disastrous gourmet hot dog concept failed, leaving him crippled by debt and facing potential litigation, I wired him a discreet $30,000 to clear the worst liabilities before they hit the family name. When Dad's flagship restaurant needed a complete overhaul of the HVAC and kitchen equipment, a critical expense, I covered the 6-figure bill disguised as an investment loan that was never intended to be repaid. The thanks I received was always the same: polite, utterly empty, and always immediately followed by the next urgent request, the next desperate favor. I kept doing it, a silent, increasingly costly act of hope, believing that if I simply paid enough, sacrificed enough, they would eventually look past the successful architect and see me, not as the outsider, not as the backup plan, but as their family, the one who truly kept the lights on. It was a tragic miscalculation. The betrayal, I now understand, wasn't coming in a single dramatic moment. It had been happening for years, quietly, definitively, sewn into the very fabric of the Maxwell name. Clang. The actual beginning of the end was a slow-motion catastrophe, delivered on a crisp autumn evening. The meeting was called on a Sunday, an echo of the family's old traditions, but the atmosphere was pure, cold business. Dad called it a discussion about the future, which was merely a code for securing Liam's escalating financial demands. They were gathered around the long mahogany dining table, the one lined with dozens of framed, smiling photos of Liam holding trophies, cutting ribbons, and shaking hands. I stood at the end, laptop open, the screen a glowing portal to the future, ready to present my proposal. It was my professional best, a comprehensive, scalable plan for a high-end, sustainable design and renovation partnership that could leverage the Maxwell name to secure lucrative contracts with boutique hotels and restaurant chains across the Southwest. It offered eco-friendly materials, long-term energy savings, and a genuine, modern, competitive edge. It was a meticulously researched plan, built on solid data and proven market trends. I spoke for precisely 5 minutes and 45 seconds, detailing the rising consumer demand for corporate sustainability, before Dad interrupted. The interruption wasn't a question, it was a verdict. "You think hotels care about recycled wood, Anya?" he said, his voice flat, devoid of curiosity, just sheer contempt. "They want cheap, fast, not fancy experiments. Your world is make-believe." Liam chuckled, a low, poisonous sound, not bothering to look up from scrolling his phone. Yeah, why don't you stick to decorating houses, sis? It suits you. This is real business. My mother, Clara, avoided my eyes, retreating behind the meaningless domesticity of rearranging a stack of linen napkins. My hands, hidden beneath the table, clenched into painful fists. It's not decoration, I repeated, forcing my voice to remain even and professional despite the internal earthquake. It's advanced architectural design and cost-saving engineering. It's the future, and it saves capital immediately. Dad leaned back in his chair, his arms crossing over his starched shirt like a final, impenetrable barrier. We are not throwing away capital on your pipe dream. Liam is opening a new, high-volume franchise location. That is the priority. That is where the Maxwell capital goes. End of discussion. The vault inside me cracked. Years of sacrifice, the six-figure bills I'd quietly paid, the terrifying, sleepless nights worrying about Mom's treatment. All of it meant nothing in the face of Liam's failing ambition. Mom, I pleaded, turning to her, seeking one single flicker of maternal truth. You've seen my work. You know this is a viable, profitable venture. She hesitated, her eyes darting like a trapped animal toward Dad, before settling on the mahogany grain of the table. It just sounds risky, Anya. You know how volatile the restaurant business is. We need stability. Risky. That word, that tired, poisonous weapon, landed harder than any insult. Then, the single, unexpected moment of external clarity. Liam's wife, Sarah, spoke. She was normally silent, intimidated by the Maxwell patriarch. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but it held a fragile conviction. I think it's innovative, Elias, she said, her eyes meeting mine briefly. Sustainability is a huge deal now. It's what clients ask for. Liam shot his wife a look so cold it was physically chilling. Sarah shrank back, instantly regretting her boldness. Dad waved a dismissive, heavy hand, ending the discussion with finality. Enough. Meeting over. Redhead, as I quickly packed up my meticulous presentation, I caught Sarah's eye again. This time, she mouthed 3 frantic words that sent a jolt of icy adrenaline through my veins. I need to tell you something. It wasn't a promise of information. It was a desperate plea for help. Later that night, long after the house had gone dark, Sarah found me in the dimly lit driveway, pacing near my car. She was visibly shaking, wrapping her arms around herself in the cool night air. It's worse than you know, Anya, she began, her voice a low, frantic stream of confession. Liam's been embezzling from the restaurants, not just spending, stealing. Thousands upon thousands a month. He's hiding it in multiple shell accounts tied to his old, failed ventures, and he's spiraling with debt from a gambling problem. He's bleeding the core business dry. My mind, the architect's mind, immediately started to process the financial structure. Are you sure? Do you have proof? She nodded quickly, pulling a thumb drive from her pocket. I was processing accounts one night and found the digital records. He's been diverting funds before they even hit the main ledger. Your parents have no idea how deep the rot is. The knowledge was a sharp, physical pain in my chest. This wasn't just emotional betrayal, it was corporate criminality that endangered every employee, every vendor, and the entire legacy Dad supposedly valued. Before I could respond, Dad's voice carried clearly and brutally from the study window, the sound muffled but distinct. We need to finalize the will tomorrow. Cut off the extraneous. Liam's the only one keeping this family together now. Anya's off doing her own thing. She doesn't care about us. Mom murmured something, likely a soft, tired assent. Then Dad's final, firm words, which sealed the vault shut on my heart. She's built her life separate from us. She gets nothing. That's settled. Standing there in the cold, isolating dark, clutching Sarah's thumb drive, I realized the full, cold horror of the situation. They weren't just emotionally abusive, they were financially parasitic. I wasn't their family. I was their ATM, their emergency fund, their fool. The betrayal hadn't been an event. It had been the operating system of the Maxwell household. The final act of cruelty arrived before dawn. My phone buzzed, the screen flooding the dark room with an aggressive white light. A new message from my mother, Clara, the ultimate enforcer of Elias's decree. "Don't call or come over. We're done. Dad's finalizing the estate. And don't even think about the will, sweetie. You made your choices." The text was clear, concise, and utterly vicious. "Don't even think about the will, sweetie." The false sweetness of the sign-off was the worst part. A final, poisoned dagger. The pain wasn't a cry. It was a vacuum. For years, I had been the silent provider, the lifeline, and now, with one vicious message, I was erased. I felt the kind of hollow, existential silence that comes after a hurricane has passed, leaving only debris. Unborn. I typed back 2 words, the only response they deserved, stripped of all emotion, period, or explanation. Got it. Set the phone down and walked to the kitchen. The tea kettle hissed softly, a sound of gentle, domestic control, the only control left in my world. I poured the tea, the steam curling against the dim morning light, and lifted the cup. I took a slow, deliberate sip. The quiet no longer felt like a punishment. It felt like a decision. It felt like power. I opened my laptop. I inserted Sarah's thumb drive, copying the hidden account ledgers onto an encrypted file, securing the evidence before deleting the temporary files. The evidence was damning. A sophisticated, years-long theft. Opened my own banking app. This was the moment of quiet, internal action, the true counterstrike. One by one, I performed the cancellations, each click a precise, surgical severing of the toxic ties. Plumbing. Mom's premium hospital payments, automatically scheduled for the 1st. Canceled, permanently. Covering the large wire transfer, canceled. Discharged. The monthly automatic payment to the corporate energy vendor for the 3 largest grill locations, stopped cold. The recurring investment loan to Liam's holding company, terminated. Each click resonated in the apartment not as a crack, but as a steel door closing on a long, dark chapter. I was calm, terrifyingly clear-headed. My money was no longer funding their silence. It was buying my absolute, unconditional freedom. The electronic storm began precisely at 10 a.m. Elias Maxwell, the master of control, realized his automatic payments were being rejected. The phone lit up with furious color. Mom first, then Dad's private line, then Liam. I watched the screen, detached, monitoring the growing panic. I didn't answer. I understood that they didn't just want me, they needed the financial mechanism I represented. By evening, the missed calls numbered over 30. The texts escalated from demanding to frantic. "You're tearing the family apart! This is business sabotage!" "The suppliers are calling, Anya. You will regret this. You will crawl back to us." I simply turned the phone face down. As the clock hit midnight, the notifications buzzed and flashed like pathetic, desperate distress signals. I finally understood. They hadn't just excluded me from the will, they had just cut off their entire financial life support system. That version of Anya Maxwell, the one who paid and stayed silent, was gone. I looked out the window, the distant city lights a field of gold, and whispered, "I'm done." Freezes of morning, the storm had morphed into a desperate siege. 37 missed calls, 11 voicemails, dozens of texts. I maintained my serene routine. The smell of fresh toast and coffee filled my apartment while the phone pulsed on the counter. I ignored all but one, a voicemail from Dad marked urgent in all caps. I hit play. His voice was a raw, commanding demand, stripped of all pretense of affection. "You need to fix this, Anya. The restaurants can't survive the week without those vendor payments. You owe us that much. We raised you." Owe us. I had covered hundreds of thousands over the years, my savings, my work, my time, and now it was framed as a debt, a moral debt for the privilege of being used. Liam's voice followed. "You're selfish! You're leaving Mom in tears because of your petty little rebellion. This is a crime." Then Mom's familiar, manipulative whimper. "Please, Anya, don't do this to me after everything we've been through." I pressed my palms against the cool marble. They weren't seeking forgiveness. They were seeking re-establishment of control. By noon, Sarah called on an untraceable burner phone. Her voice was barely a breath. "They know about the money, Anya. Liam found the thumb drive. He's telling your father I planted the evidence to frame him. He's furious, desperate. They are both closing ranks." Pledged. "It doesn't matter what they say," I told her, my tone steel. "I have the copies. I'm done explaining myself. Get out of there, Sarah. Get safe." Emotional siege wore on, but my resolve hardened. I agreed to meet them a week later, not for reconciliation, but for the final, definitive separation. The cafe I chose was small, independent, anonymous, a place of quiet neutrality. They were waiting, a tableau of escalating panic. Dad, rigid with contained fury. Mom, pale and clutching a handkerchief, a prop for sympathy. Liam, twitchy and radiating fear. Sarah, wisely, was nowhere near the inevitable explosion. Dad launched immediately, his fury focused on the most immediate threat. "You've caused a disaster, Anya. The power is being shut off at 2 locations. Vendors are filing preliminary liens. You are committing business sabotage." I set my bag down, the movement slow and deliberate. "That is no longer my problem, Elias." Liam leaned forward, his sneer a mask of bravado over terror. "You think you're better than us now? Just because you play with paint and fancy furniture, you think you can destroy us?" "Blackmail, Liam. The word you're looking for is design," I corrected him calmly. "And I don't need to destroy you. You've been destroying yourselves for years." "You love attention," he spat. "Vers," I cut him off. "You stole from the restaurants, Liam. You bled the core business dry while pretending to be the heir. I have the records." The words were a direct hit. Dad's composure shattered, his eyes turning to his son, full of sudden, terrifying doubt. "What is she talking about, Liam?" Confirmed. "The hidden accounts, the diverted funds, the gambling debts." Liam stood up, his chair scraping back violently. "She's lying. She's trying to blame me for your little rebellion." "The digital records confirm the transfers," I stated, my tone flat, unassailable. "And you know it." Gravitational looked from Liam to me, the agonizing truth finally breaking through his arrogance. "Is that true, Liam? You believe her over me, the daughter who abandoned the family?" Liam roared, leaning across the table. "Enough!" I said, silencing them both. "This is not about jealousy. It's about respect and honesty, and a $300,000 deficit you created." Mom, desperate, tried the emotional appeal. "Anya, please don't do this. We can talk." "We are past talking, Mom. You made that clear when you sent the text." I quoted the entire message, every single word, my voice unwavering. "You meant it exactly like that." Dad, defeated, tried to diminish me one last time. "You've always been too sensitive." I allowed myself a cold smile. "And you've always mistaken cruelty and manipulation for discipline." I reached into my bag, pulling out the folder, not Sarah's evidence, but a contract. "I sold the intellectual property for my sustainable design project," I announced. A major national hospitality group purchased the rights for a lump sum of $1 million. Blackmail, they stared at me, dumbfounded. I built that without your help, I continued, emphasizing every syllable. No loans, no family capital, just my work. That money doesn't come with any Maxwell obligation, expectation, or attachment. Liam scoffed. Good for you. So what? You just want to rub it in? No, I said, leaning forward. I want you to understand that I don't need this family anymore, and you don't get to call me when the edifice you built on lies and theft collapses. Dad's jaw worked, his eyes blazing with impotent rage. You think that money makes you powerful? No, I countered, rising to my feet. Walking away, knowing I don't need you, that is power. Mom was weeping now, genuine tears of loss. We're still your family, Anya. Family doesn't use you like an ATM, Clara, I said softly, using her first name for the first time in 2 decades. Family doesn't write you off when you stop paying their bills. Liam slammed his fist on the table, a final, pathetic display. You're pathetic! You think you can just cut us out? Funny, I replied, grabbing my bag. That's exactly what you did to me a week ago. I didn't wait for another word. I am not your safety net anymore. I am not your backup plan. I am gone. As I walked out, I heard Mom whisper, Please, Anya, don't do this. I didn't look back. The door chimed softly. The air outside was cool, clean. I reached my car, took the deepest breath of air I'd ever taken, and pulled out my phone. I deleted the entire thread of calls and texts. I drove away not from them, but toward the open road. The final reckoning was inevitable and swift. The evidence I secured, combined with the sudden, inexplicable refusal of major vendors to continue service, triggered an immediate financial crisis. Dad tried to leverage his reputation, but the financial facts, confirmed by Sarah's records, could not be argued. The family legacy collapsed under the weight of debt and lawsuits within 6 months. Liam was indeed exposed, his name in the papers associated with fraud and embezzlement. Sarah, having filed for divorce, moved far away. Mom and Dad sold the mansion and retreated into a small, miserable existence outside of Tulsa. A year later, I was in my Manhattan office, overseeing the design of a stunning new high-rise hotel. I didn't feel joy, only a strange, heavy calm, the silence after the storm. My firm was thriving. I was designing spaces of light, structure, and endurance, the opposite of the dark, crumbling foundation of the Maxwell Grill. One afternoon, a notification blinked on my phone, an unknown number from the old 918 area code. I watched it ring, the sound fading beneath the quiet jazz in my elegant, self-designed office. I smiled, lifted my cup, and took a slow sip. The tea was the same, but the understanding was new. Peace didn't come from fixing them. It came from letting them fall and building something real, solid, and honest in the space they had once occupied. People ask if I miss them. I miss the dream. But the reality is, family isn't blood. It's respect, honesty, and safety. And silence, when chosen, is the loudest, most definitive declaration of freedom an architect can make.